What up, though? Welcome to the Mic Check Podcast. You are now in the booth. Hope you got them bars ready. This your boy T Word, the People's Champ. Thank you for joining. Appreciate y'all stopping by. All those who do stop by, if you're watching on the replay, hey, thank you. We appreciate every minute that y'all spend with us. So, on this fine Friday, we're going to talk about some NFL stuff, and then we're going to also talk about some boxing that's coming up this weekend and a couple of other fights. We also have some videos coming out about those things as well. So again, like I said, I appreciate y'all. Go ahead and hit that like button. I'm going to give a few people an opportunity to come through, cast this out on a different platform. Yeah, yeah. So it's been a few days. I intended to go live all week, but just a lot of different things will get in the way of that, man. Sometimes your best laid plans will get pushed to the back burner. And that kind of happened. Just a lot of different things I need to take care of on my end. And we all have, personal lives and things like that we have to take care of. So I was doing that also, looking at some new opportunities, trying to grow my different brands. Obviously, I'm a personal trainer. I'm a media specialist as well as an IT specialist. So there's a lot of different things that I do that require me to spend some time um, away from taking care of this channel. I'm obviously building a platform for myself and my co-host Quinton Lilley, as well as our third member of the team, Landonise. I call her my big sister. So basically, this platform is intended for all of us to get a chance to speak our piece in the sports space. We got basketball specialist. Lan is a sports mom, so she covers a little bit of everything. I'm a sports specialist. I cover football, boxing, a little bit of basketball, but football and boxing are my specialties. So, just kind of giving us a well-rounded approach to sports in general. Sometimes it's debate, sometimes it's just analysis where we take what's happening on the field, on the court, or in the ring, and we just give an opinion of what it is. And it's not something that's up for debate. It's just how we feel about it or just how we see it. And that's kind of the whole purpose of the channel. And then we also want those who watch and listen to get their opportunity to speak their piece and then show their own version of support by commenting and liking the videos and sharing the videos and things like that. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off today and talk about the NFL. And I want to start with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are going to be hosting Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. And I want to talk about why this game is so good. So what you're looking at is the new version. And I don't like to put like, oh, we're looking at the next Floyd, the next this, the next that. But this is kind of what you're dealing with right now. This is the new version of Brady versus Manning. And I think it's such a classic rivalry that's budding between these two young men because they both are at the top of the game very early on. And I like that we're seeing them face each other at a peak time in their careers, and it's not in the waning years. So when I look at statistically how good they are, when I look at stylistically how exciting they are, um, if I'm grading those things, one side of that equation is more is closer than the other. I think statistically, you're getting a lot of the same things from Burrow and Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes is passing with out of this world stats, and he's been able to do it with a variety of receiver types. Specifically, he had Tyreek Hill for so many years, so he was able to exploit the deep ball and um, stretch out defenses. And then he's always had a fair to good running game. It's never been super great, but he's always had something that was at least a threat. It makes it a lot easier to pass the ball. So statistically, he's been able to put up the numbers. Then you look at Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow has very good receivers, including a top talent in Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is a dog. Tyler Boyd is a dog. Uzoma at tight end is good. And then you have Joe Mixon at running back. So you've got everything you need to be a threat at each level. You got a guy who can go deep. You got a couple guys who could do something at the mid. And then you've got the dump off in the short. Your screen game works, stuff like that. So when you start to put all those different pieces of the puzzle together, I'm not going to say it's easy to be statistically good because all-star teams don't always work. But this is an all-star team on offense for sure, and they're all young. I think that the veteran guys like 6 years in, 5 years in. That means that this team can be dangerous for many years to come. And that's what makes it so exciting to see the level of success they're having at such an early point in their careers. I mean, I just like it. You know what I'm saying? I'm big on seeing prime players at a prime time in their life. I don't mind seeing the legendary stars, still putting it on towards the end of their career. But that's not what I show up and watch games for. I show up and watch games to see the young talent, and I want to see it for long stretches. And I think you have an opportunity for that in Cincinnati. And that's what makes this game so exciting between the two teams. I'm going to get some stats going here. Let's see. Let's look at offensive rankings first. I'm pulling this up as we go, and I'm freestyling this, so bear with me. I want to be certain that this is authentic, and we're getting like a real time. We're getting a real time account of what's going on. So I'm going to, let's see, sportsnot.com. They have an article that says best NFL offenses entering title Sunday. So this is good because this kind of will summarize a lot of things for us, and it was dropped today. So this is really good. So they started at number 20 and they have the actually this has been updated somehow because it's got like a week 16 thing on here. So let's just go to the top of this list, which is at the bottom of the list. We're going to head down to the end of the page. And I like to use this type of stuff to, okay, so they did update it. All right, so we're going to start here. And number one of the remaining teams in the playoffs, Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs are number one, obviously led by Patrick Mahomes. And a lot of it they're attributing to the run game. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes had an injury issue. So they ended up having to rely on the run game, and they're attributing it to Isaiah Pacheco and Jerick McKinnon, who put up 120 yards on 23 carries. That's pretty outstanding. That means that they were very efficient, and that's what you want to see from your ground game. You don't want to have to carry the ball too much because you could bleed the clock by just draining it down, by just run the ball, run that clock down, and just keep the offense chugging along, and they were able to do that. Then you have the Cincinnati Bengals are the second most explosive offense, basically putting up 27 points against the Bills. I think that was pretty good because the Bills have a pretty good defense. The Eagles come in as the third best team, most explosive team. And you've got Miles Sanders, A.J. Brown at receiver, Jalen Hurts, obviously at quarterback. So you got nice little triplets. They're going to push the needle. They're going to push the bar against the 49ers stout defense. And then the fourth best offense remaining, the team that won by a score of 19-12, the San Francisco 49ers, come in at number 6. Now, in between them, you had the Buffalo Bills, who made the playoffs, and also, surprisingly, the Lions were explosive. So just based on the way the season ended, three of the 4 remaining teams were in the top 5. They were 1, 2, and 3, and then the other team was just outside the top 5 at number 6. And when you've got Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, and then you come in with the rookie Brock Purdy, and he doesn't have to do a whole lot. Something I shared in the previous video was When you're getting that type of production from the rest of your team, you don't need that rookie quarterback. The pressure's off. This dude is playing with house money. He has a defense that's going to get the ball back. Um, he has an he has a run game that's going to be very productive. When you got Christian McCaffrey, he's such a multi level threat. I guess is the best way to put it. He can run the ball. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can line up at receiver. And oh, by the way, let's run the trick play and put him at quarterback, or we could put him in a wildcat, and he knows how to find a lane and get going. Now, I do think a significant amount of tread has been worn off his tires, so I believe that that does affect his ability to be as productive as he could be, because back in Carolina, he was the offense. He was accounting for more offense than Cam Newton at times, and Cam was like 60% of their offense. McCaffrey stepped right in, and they just shifted the rest of the workload onto him. And then he started to be injured and things like that. I think now in San Francisco, the pressure's not on him to be the only guy, because you have Kittle, Ayuk, you've got Debo Samuel. You know, you have a way to spread the load around, and then you have a defense that doesn't require you to put up more than 20 points. So when you put all those pieces together, Christian McCaffrey could play within himself. He doesn't have to press. He's less likely to get injured. And then you throw in Brock Purdy, who he can hand it off half the time. Hell, you can hand it off to Ayuk, you can hand it off to Samuel, or you can hand it off to McCaffrey, and you're going to be really productive that day. You'll get 100 yards out of those three guys, and only one of them is a running back. Then you go ahead and add in a receiving threat who can help you underneath and get down the field. George Kittle has probably the most explosive plays at tight end than anybody. And I know this because he's on my fantasy football team. He did start the season sketchy because he was injured. And then when he came back, it took him about 2 weeks to get rolling. But once he got rolling, the man did his thing. And you have to respect the work ethic he put in to get back to it. You dig? So I am a big fan of Kittle. I do like the proposition of San Francisco heading back to the Super Bowl and taking on and maybe beating Philadelphia. Unfortunately, I don't feel they have enough firepower operating at a high level to beat the Eagles. And with them being the only offense that's left that was outside of the top five, that kind of tells you. And there's a significant gap. So I'm going to go ahead and get these offensive stats up. I like the article we saw because I like the way they were ranked based on production. But let's look at some real numbers here. Let's look at some offensive stats. Because for the most part, Kansas City is going to be up there because of Patrick Mahomes. Now, the only team I hadn't talked about so far was the Eagles, so I'm going to get to them before I get into these numbers. Excuse me. All right, let me see if I can rank these. I'm going to go ahead and rank these numbers by most to least. Okay, so Philadelphia, and I'm on NFL.com for these stats. Philadelphia's offense is geared to go, even when Jalen Hurts was out. I mean, they faced a really good defense in New Orleans, and I think that kind of hurt them in that game. They weren't able to be as productive because they were a little bit one-dimensional, and that helped the Saints beat them. And the Saints weren't a good team this year. Obviously, I watched that game because that's my favorite team, so that's kind of like my point of reference because I know how good or bad the Saints were at different things. So when they play other teams, I could use it as a barometer, especially around mid-season. Early in the season, we had no clue what they were. But at a certain point, we knew exactly what we were dealing with. And with that being said, when they faced Philly, Philly was not at 100%. And the Saints took advantage. Their defense wasn't 100%, nor their offense. That team that showed up in Philly that day is night and day to what you're seeing in the playoffs. And they showed it with a resounding win after taking a week off to getting fully healthy. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's back. Jalen Hurts is back. Miles Sanders doing this thing. They're clicking on all cylinders. And that's what you want to see. But San Francisco having a good defense is a decent offset, but I don't know that they're going to be enough of an offset to keep the Eagles from eventually breaking the seal and putting up a couple touchdowns that the San Francisco offense just can't muster, because the Eagles defense is pretty good and they're opportunistic facing the rookie quarterback. If you could create pressure with just your front four, let your linebackers rove, and then guys like Chauncey Gardner Johnson and the defensive backs can make plays, down the field, maybe get a turnover here or there. Remember, we talked about in the past the extra possessions that a good defense can create for you, whether it's forcing 3-and-outs with short fields where you got them punting from inside their own 20. So now all of a sudden these dudes are, your offense is getting the ball at midfield or something like that. Those are the type of dynamics of football that I enjoy watching, the minutia of it. And I think the Eagles are going to win that battle, the field position battle, just based on good defensive play and not necessarily relying on their offense to just put up a crazy amount of points. But at some point, that seal's going to break, and they will. All right, so let's get into offensive rankings. All right, so passing. The Chiefs were the number one offense in passing with 41 passing TDs to only 12 interceptions. And the passer rating as a team of 104.7. Now, the majority of that has been Patrick Mahomes. However, in garbage time and things like that, other people have had to come in. They have 73 plays of 20-plus yards. That's stupid crazy. And then only 26 sacks over the season and only less than 200 sack yards. That's important because the less yardage you give up when you're going down, the better. If you think about the Super Bowl where Patrick Mahomes was on the losing end, he was giving up a lot of yards and sacks or throwing interceptions. So those are two things that are completely night and day from that Super Bowl against the Bucs, and he just didn't have the offensive line to compete. The next team that's left in the Final Four, the Bengals are, this is sixth in passing yards, 4,500 yards, 35 and 12. So less TDs, but about the same amount of interceptions and a one-on-one passer rating. That's really good. 54 explosive plays at 20-plus yards. That's pretty good, and that's why they're where they're at. Dropping down, the Eagles are number 8. They have 4,300 passing yards. Obviously, they have a quarterback who's more on the mobile side, 25 and 9 TD to interception ratio, and they gave up 44 sacks. Typically, when you have a running QB, that happens. Another note on sacks, the Bengals gave up 44 sacks, but Joe Burrow tends to be a statue in the pocket, and that leads to it. Show you a difference in how an experienced QB can get out of sacks. Tom Brady only had 22 sacks. That's one of the lowest in starting quarterbacks. That's pretty outrageous. All right, then we're going to slide down to around, we're around number 15. Well, 13, you have the 49ers with 4,000 passing yards. Again, they went through 3 quarterbacks this year. They were 30 and 9, so they protected the football, only gave up 31 sacks, and they had 56 plays over 20 yards. So I think that's a pretty good balance of things. We're going to go ahead and shift over to the run game. And if you're here for boxing, bear with me. I am making sure that we also cover our football stuff because, that's my passion. I could get into this and chop football all day. All right, so let's get into rushing yards. All right. Number one rushing team was actually the Bears. And of the teams that remained, the Eagles were the most productive on the ground at 2,509 yards, 17 plays of 20 or more yards, and 32 rushing TDs. That's going to actually lead the league. That's pretty good. That's going to get you into the postseason with only 7 giveaways by fumble. 49ers are a couple slots behind, 2,360 yards, 20 TDs on the ground, and 19 plays of 20 yards or more. That's pretty good. All right, let's see. The other 2 teams, Chiefs, 1,970 yards. They're down around 17 or 18. And then the Bengals were number 28 with 1,500 yards, 14 TDs on the ground. So they've got a decent but not crazy productive running game. And then the Chiefs had 18 TDs on the ground. So this kind of tells you got a couple of teams that are going to run the ball really well. You got a couple of teams that's going to throw the ball really well. So the NFC is often the running side of the league. So this makes sense. This is chalk, right? All right, let's look at scoring, and then we're going to switch over to defense. All right, so the Eagles were at the top of the pile. Let's see, total TDs. It wasn't the Colts, I can tell you that. Chiefs were at the top of the pile. 61 total TDs, 41 in the air, 18 on the ground. The Eagles provided balance, 59 TDs, 25 on the ground, 32 through the air. Next, out of the last four, you have the Niners with 52. They had a couple special teams TDs because you have 30 passing and 20 rushing, and then two non-offensive TDs. And then let's see, we had the Eagles. Who's the last one? The Bengals. Bengals were just a little bit behind them with 49, 35 receiving and 14 rushing. So this kind of tells you how these teams are structured, right? If you're a football fan, you get it. All right, switching over to defense. All right, let's see. All right. Sorry, these tabs are switching a little bit slow. All right, pass defense. Let's see. We gotta go to the bottom. One of the best pass defenses, the best pass defense in the league was the Eagles. Only 5.5 yards per attempt, only 3,000 yards on the season. Second was my New Orleans Saints at 31-34 pass defense. Only allowed 17 passing TDs, but only got 7 turnovers, while the Eagles allowed 22 passing TDs and had 17 interceptions and then 70 sacks. By and far the best, most productive defense in that regard in the league. A little bit further down, the other defenses were not quite as good until they got to the postseason. The Bengals allowed 3,600 passing yards, 17 TDs with 13 INTs, 30 sacks. So in a way, they look good on paper, but then when you really look at the stats compared to the rest of the league, they didn't. Sometimes what happens in these regards is there's just good fortune. Things are just at a timely moment in a game. It gets you where you need to be. 49ers gave up 3,700 yards passing, 20 TDs or 20 INTs, 44 sacks. So when you're productive in the turnover department, good things tend to happen for you. All right, where are these Chiefs? Now we're looking at the Chiefs, 3,700 with 33 TDs given up and 11 INTs, and then 55 sacks. So again, being opportunistic, because you look at a team that finished 14-3 and you think like, well, you guys don't really do anything against the pass, but yet and still they make it to the Final Four. All right, let's look at the ground game. And I'm going to kind of move away from some of the minutia of this and just get into the overwhelming stuff, the big numbers. Let's see. All right, let's see. Rushing yards. 49ers were one of the better teams against the run. The Bengals were very close behind. The Chiefs were also in the top 10. And then the Eagles were around number 14 or 15. So not too bad. You know, typically if you want to be successful in the postseason, you've got to finish at a certain level, like at least middle of the league to top 10. And all four teams have done that against the run. So that means that they're able to kind of get teams off the field and not get stuck on the field with these long drives and giving up points at the same time. So kudos to them for doing that. Let's see. Like I said, 2 interceptions for TD and 1 fumble return for TD for the Niners. So that accounted for those 3 non-offensive TDs. So something to look at. The Bengals had a fumble return for TD. The Chiefs had a safety and 2 interception return for TD. And the Eagles had 2 INT return for TD. So now you're starting to get a clear picture of exactly what these teams are and how these matchups are going to go. Now, I'm going to do a video later where I'm going to go more into the detail of exactly why. I'm going to do a video on each matchup and tell you all exactly why I think one team will beat the other. But you're going to have to tune in for that later. We're going to really get into like a true analysis of it. This was just kind of sharing some stats, give you a general idea of what I think of the teams going in. I'm going to tell you why, who wins and who loses at another time. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over to boxing. Big fight coming up on Saturday. We've got Artur Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. And I've been kicking around what type of betting I want to do on this particular fight because there's an overwhelming favorite, which is Better Bev, but it's just too tempting not to put plunk down some dollars on Yard because um I don't know. I mean, I just had a betting urge. He is a plus he's a plus 630 on one site. He's like a plus 810 on another site. So I'm like, shoot, hey, it's an opportunity to get the bag, man. Why not? You put maybe if you put up 25, if you've already loaded your bet account, you put up a $25 wager on Yard at 810. It takes 100. It takes 100 to get to 810. So you could get 405 off 50. So you could get right at around 200 off $25. That's a pretty worthy wager in my opinion. That's an opportunity to come up on a couple $100 off a $25 wager. And if you lose it, it's only $25. In order to win on Better Beef, you have to actually put up basically $1,250 to win 100. It's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. Um, so I got to decide exactly what I want to bet and what I want to hedge with, because the Better Be of KO, you've got to bet it a certain way. You got to lay it out like within a certain round, and then you got to hit that round, and then you can make some money off it. So you got to be specific. So you add some risk because it's low risk to just say KO, TKO, or some type of stoppage. So you've got to put like between round, 4 and 6 or something like that. Then you could go ahead and get that and make some money that way. So definitely take your time. If you're a betting person, look at the betting lines, figure out what makes sense for you, and go that route. Now, as far as in the ring, I am going to do a full analysis, well, a short analysis video about 6-7 minutes. But I'm looking forward to it because it's a style clash fight in that Better Be if it's like all gas, no brakes, and he's just so overwhelming to his opponents. And I think Yard is going to try and maybe like box, but he's going to get he's going to get drawn into a fight. And because of that, it's going to make it difficult for him to win. Now, if he can find a way to utilize the limited boxing skills he has and just avoid Better Bill's big shots, like maybe parry some shots, definitely jump in his defensive bag, he does have an opportunity to do something good in the fight. I'm wondering what do you guys think about that? It looks like we don't have anybody in chat right now, and that's okay. So definitely leave it down in the comments, and tell me what you think. I'm pulling up the rest of this card because I feel like this is a card where I'm not familiar with a whole lot of the guys on it. So I'm not gonna BS y'all and pretend I can tell you who's gonna win these other fights because it ain't gonna happen. Um, yeah, for the most part, not familiar with most of this card, so I'm not even going to pretend right there. It does start at, let's see what time. Kicks off at noon. This one you can watch on ESPN, ESPN Plus. So tune in for that. And then the other fight on Saturday is going to be Alexis Rocha against, I believe his name is Jacob. I'm sorry, George Ashy. That's going to be at 7 p.m. on DAZN. So go ahead and tune in and check that out if you have a DAZN subscription and enjoy the fight. Now, something that got announced that I'm really looking forward to is going to be Tony Harrison and Tim Tszyu in March. So I hadn't really had a chance to talk much about it yet because it was coming out and it wasn't finalized, but now it's actually been added to the app. So I'm able to see it. And it looks like it's going to be a PBC card. Hey, peace and blessings, League of Legacies. Says, what up, T? Chilling, brother. Just wanted to pop in and do a quick little live stream. I've been off for a few days, so before I start to work on all these videos, I have want to tap in and just talk to my peoples, man. It's been a few days. I hadn't put anything out, so I thought it was appropriate to do a stream today for a little bit. I ain't gonna be on too long, but definitely wanted to just chop it up with some folks. So right now, I'm just looking at the prospects of Tony Harrison versus Tim Zoo. Pretty excited about this fight. Um, I think I think you might have been in another stream where we've had this conversation, but I don't remember if you were in that conversation. What do you think about Tony Harrison and Tim Zoo? Do you think it's a good fight? Is there anything in particular that you're looking forward to on the fight? Like for me, I want to see the I want to see how Tony is going to handle the pressure that Zoo's going to bring because I feel like he's the superior boxer, but his chin has been tested and he's not always passed the test. So if Zoo is able to close distance and make it a little bit of a dirty fight, and what I mean by dirty is inside in the trenches, in the pocket, nice and tight, that doesn't favor Harrison. He's going to need to keep Zoo at a distance. And I'm looking forward to see how that's going to work out for him. Another thing I'm a little concerned about is so nothing I'm looking forward to outside of who's going to show any mid dominance. Oh, for sure. And you know that's going to be the give and take. You know the yin and yang of it because of their different styles. I can see each guy trying to find a way to impose their will early. Typically, that favors the power guy. So in this case, that would be Zoo. Um, Tony influencing his will would be him controlling center ring, but also keeping a distance by boxing and something like that. Should be a good preview and what they'll display in a Charlo fight. Well, so we've seen what Tony can do versus Charlo, but now Tony's a little older. He's moving different. I'm wondering if that's if he's going to be more competitive against Charlo because I think in the second fight we saw him at his best against Charlo, and Charlo was having a little bit of a struggle. In my opinion, a lot of people had him up on the cards. I thought he did better in the second fight than the first because that's how he was able to get there and land a big shot that eventually stopped the fight. But um, I guess the way that Tony boxes is a different type of boxing, is a different style of boxing than what Charlo does. So I don't know how Zoo is going to respond to Charlo, who can actually impose his will. So let's stop there for a second. So Harrison is going to use distance. He's going to use footwork and savvy to keep distance away from Zoo, landing combinations, make him miss, try to tire him out by getting him to move around the ring, and frustrate him by not allowing him to land his pressure shots. As a flip, Charlo is going to stand there and bang with him because he's confident in his own chin and he's confident in his own power. And I feel like watching Harrison face Zoo, I don't think it's going to give us a clear picture of what Zoo can do against Charlo because it's a different type of hot stuff coming back at him. It's a different type of offense coming back. Now that said, I still feel like it's still going to be a good way to see what an experienced boxer does against Tim Zoo. All right, let me see. Legal Legacy says exactly what is Tony going to bring the next time around? Will he continue to improve, and will that force Charlo to improve? Good question. Brenda McDonald says, "What up, T? What up, Brenda? Thank you for popping in. Appreciate you." Um, League. Um, I don't know that Tony's going to get better. And now this is the other part of what I was going to get to. So Tony is training Alicia Baumgartner, which I think is an amazing idea because I like the way she looks since he's been a part of it. Um, I like the level of confidence he's given her. I like the belief in her ability, and I like the slickness she's developing. She looks more fluid. So I could tell that they're spending a lot of time together because his stamp on her, his influence on her is very evident. Because of that, I wonder how much time he's dedicating to himself to try and add new wrinkles and improve. So because of that, I don't know that we're going to get a better version if he eventually gets to Charlo. Let's say he beats Zoo. He'll be fighting Charlo probably late summer, right? Would that be enough time for him to go back, watch the tape, see what he did well in the first two fights, and then come back around and show better in the next two fights? I mean, the next fight? That would be my question about what you're saying. If he can't get better, if he doesn't show anything new of significance, I don't see Charlo going away from the plan, except now because Charlo has taken some more people out since their last fight. His confidence is at an all-time high in him being able to do what he do. The worst thing that could happen for Harrison if he was to win against Tim Tszyu and line up a shot at Charlo is let Charlo get a fight before they fight. Because then he's going to feel comfortable with his hand, that it's been broken and all that stuff. So that's kind of my opinion on that. Brenda, what do you think? Let me see. Okay, we still got that on the screen. But it should be an interesting fight nonetheless. Something I'm definitely looking forward to watching. Should be on regular Showtime, so that's even better. Um, you know, we'll get treated to it under our regular Showtime subscription, which I'm getting for the low right now. All right, let's see. Legal Legacy says that's a good point. I always say a great teacher is always able to learn from their student because they can now see what they preach in action. What if he sees something to work on for himself? Oh, I like that. So that's gonna be a how egotistical are you type of situation, right? Because if Tony does feel like he can improve, because he's not that old anyway. I think Tony's like 32, 33, so he's still fairly young. But does he feel like he has boxing mastered to a certain point that he can't learn from his pupil? To where like he's looking at her do stuff and making real just common rookie mistakes, and he's thinking like, well, I don't do that because I've been doing this too long. I heard something recently. I heard it a while back, and then I heard it again recently. The phrase is um, a professional a professional drills something until they can't get it wrong. No, a youngster would drill something so they could get it right. A professional drills it so they can't get it wrong. And I think that's applicable in the sense that if Tony feels like he's such a pro, he can't get it wrong, he won't see a reason to try and fix something. Brenda says not very familiar with him. Oh, okay. It's all good. Tony Harrison fought Jamel Charlo twice. He beat him once on the cards, and then he was stopped by Charlo. Not really a knockout. The ref stopped it because Charlo caught Tony with a good shot. He looked a little dazed. He couldn't get back on offense and defense right, so the ref called it a day on him. But it was a good fight the second time around too. In fact, some people even said Harrison was actually winning the second fight. So if they were to line up after Harrison fights Tim Tszyu, this would be basically like a rubber match, and it would be pretty interesting for some. They're just a couple of years removed from their last fight, so I think they're still physically close to the same condition. I think that where their careers have gone with Charlo becoming undisputed and Harrison kind of just trying to work his way back to the top of the rankings. Um, I don't think that they're at the same place in regards to confidence and things like that. I mean, Tony's a naturally confident, cocky dude, but I don't know that he's on the level where Charlo's at. Charlo feels like he could beat anybody in the world. And when you got somebody that has skills and that type of self-confidence, it's hard to beat him, but it'd be an interesting fight to see. But Harrison still has to beat Tim Tszyu, who I think is a very worthy foe. He's earned his number one spot in the WBO. So he's going to try and protect his opportunity at a championship fight against Charlo, which is another thing to look at. So Tim Tszyu against Charlo, like I said earlier, I feel like Charlo could stand in that fire and take the power that Tim Tszyu is used to overwhelming people with. Because when he fought Terrell Gausha in their fight, I think that was Tszyu's last fight, when they went toe to toe, Gausha stood in that pocket with him and used that jab on him and even put Tim Tszyu down for the first time in his career. And he's not known as a power puncher. So if you're in there with somebody like Charlo, you can't make them same mistakes. He wasn't defensively responsible. Now, later in the fight, he eventually stopped Gausha, but that dude gave him hell for a good 3 rounds before it looks like either he ran out of gas or he did. That what happened actually was he didn't have a strategy to adjust once Tim Tszyu adjusted. And that was the difference in the fight. because once Tim Zoo caught his timing and caught on to his game plan, it was a wrap for Gaucher, and it's just a matter of time you start to see him get hit, stuff like that. Hey, the little icon didn't come through, but appreciate you coming through. Texas Run Boxing. What's up with you, bro? I don't know what you got going on right now, but I'm gonna drop this for you. So if you got time, feel free to tap in. If you don't, you just want to listen, that's cool too. Right now, we were talking about Tony Harrison and Tim Zoo, kind of just projecting some things to look for in a fight. I'm going to do a full fight analysis closer to and give a prediction. But right now, we're just talking about just some general stuff. What we'll be looking for. League of Legacies is looking for just which guy is going to try to impose their will. I'm interested in the style clash of the fight. Because you have a guy who's going to be pressure and power, and you have another guy who's more slick and a pure boxer, and which guy is going to be able to impose their will on the result of the fight. All good, fam. I know you got things going on. I don't mind just talking to you guys. If y'all keep the comments flowing, I keep the conversation going. You dig? But for me, the biggest thing is just seeing that style clash in that fight. I really just want to see. I also want to see what happens when Tim Zoo faces somebody who can actually adjust. So again, like I said in this last fight, once he caught on to Gaucher's timing and his patterns, like what he was going to do, his combinations, his go-to moves, he was able to just start syncing up his own stuff, catching him between shots, beating him to the punch. It's kind of like his youth took over, and it was just a matter of time. You're not gonna have them opportunities against Tony Harrison unless you catch him with something sharp and slick that he don't see coming. That's the only way I feel like he gets Tony in a bad way. So I want to see how he's gonna adjust. All right, Brenda, we'll be here a little while. I think I'm gonna run it for about another 15 minutes till 1 o'clock Central Time, and then I'm gonna get up out of here because I got to get some recording done. But yeah, it's I think for the most part it should be a pretty exciting match. Um are you guys gonna watch the Better Beef and Yard fight? Are y'all gonna do any betting? What's your prediction? Is there anything in particular you're looking for? I mean, I'm trying to figure out if somehow Yard is going to be able to box somehow, um, and keep Better Biv off him. Like that's gonna be the scary part. Like, um, can he actually keep the distance and get some shots off and possibly catch Better Biv slipping? Because just like Joe Smith Jr. found out, if you're trying to bring the pressure, Archer is going to take you out. He's going to eventually land that shot that's going to stagger you. And he got that from the mountains, caveman power. So ain't too many people going to be able to stand up and have a chin of that. Like he got like heavyweight power at light heavyweight, you know? I'll be watching the habit of be of winning, but I might place a small bet on Yard winning by KO. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's his only path to victory because surviving, you're not going to beat him. I'm in the same headspace. I'm looking at Yard by KO. Now, I think you can make a little something if you want to do two wagers and put a little change on Better Beef, but you just picked the round or the round range. You can win a little something that way. But just betting it straight up with a KO, TKO, or stoppage, you got to put too much money down to win something off that. So I think it's a pretty safe bet to bet a round or round range, like between 4 and 6 or something like that on Better Beef, and maybe like $25 on Yard. You could probably win about, I think, either 150 or $200 off that. So if you got it to spend, it ain't tricking if you got it. Yeah, I have to sit down and actually do my do my own bet. Let me see what else we got. Okay, so this is another topic I want to talk about. So the WBO rankings, we kind of know who Errol Spence is going to fight. I believe they're talking about um, Ramon Villa and Boots getting in the ring because Villa is at the top of the IBF since he beat um, Speedy Rashidi. So I'd like to see that fight. Hey, for sure, bro. And I mean, I ain't gonna take all credit. I watch a channel called Boxing Gym's Film Study, and he gives different breakdowns, and he'll tell you kind of how to lay your bet, how to hedge your bet. He's been pretty productive. I mean, I think he has like a 90% win rate, 85% win rate. So he's pretty much winning on everything. So definitely check him out. He does his prediction videos and analysis. He uses film. So he'll show you some things like as a boxer, some things that you might even pick up yourself. He has a video on Shakur Stevenson where when he fought I think it was either Conceição or I think it was a Valdez fight, but he was doing some stuff with his foot where he was just placing his foot just at this little very specific position, and it was making Valdez reset, and he was getting offense off on him. I don't want to put it on here because I don't want to get a flag or nothing. I'm going to ask him if I have the permission next time. But go to Boxing Gym's Film Study and check him out. And when I say, bro, his analysis is so on point. When you watch the fight after the film study, you're going to see everything he was talking about real time. It's super dope. But he gives betting advice as well after he gives a fight prediction. Now I give my own predictions based on what I think, but I definitely factor in that analysis, and it helps me get a pretty good idea of what I want to share with my listeners. Um, but yeah, I was on something before I replied to that. What was I talking about? Oh, so potential WBO opponents. So with Jerron Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, Keith Thurman, and the likes of them, eventually, well, by the time the mandatories do being removed from the rankings, you've got Alexis Rocha, who has a fight on tomorrow. That he is a heavy favorite to win. Like you can't even win no money on the fight, no matter how you pick it. And he's fighting a guy who I just don't see him winning. And I think this was like a last minute replacement for who he was initially supposed to fight. But anyway, so he's going to be in line to be the number one and number two in the WBO by May. Definitely by the end of at the end of this month, he's going to jump up 2 or 3 spots in the rankings. Um, I don't know how it looks on paper as far as him against Terrence Crawford. He'll be a live enough dog. This guy actually lost to Speedy Rashidi Ellis, but I think he'll be a live enough dog to make it a decent fight, but not a great fight. I still see him getting KO'd. And I just kind of wonder if there hasn't been a fight between Spence and Crawford, like put down on the books, like, hey, after you fight that guy, I'm going to fight this guy, and we're going to fight each other. If that's not set by the time Spence makes it to the ring in May, I don't think they're ever going to fight at 147. And I think we'll see both the champions drop their belts and just move on because it's never going to happen. I don't see Terrence Crawford hanging around to fight them other dudes if Errol Spence ain't there. So but I think it's gonna be Rocha. That's who I'm picking for Terrence Crawford to fight. Now it's something else I had seen. Oh, also I was listening to the Boxing Voice today, and Bill Haney was on there, and he announced it in a slick way, but he didn't say it was official. So apparently it's Loma and Devin Haney on May 20th. Um, they haven't picked a location. So they've got Vegas booked, Top Rank and PBC have Vegas booked on May 20th. But he also threw out there that it might be in Saudi Arabia. So I'm thinking if it's in Saudi Arabia, then we won't probably get it on pay per view, which would be great. We could get it on regular ESPN. But I think if it's in Vegas, where they're not going to have as much money being injected into the fight, I think that's probably going to end up in that's going to end up on pay per view because they've been floating it around, and I think that's the reason they hadn't fully announced it is because they're trying to figure out if they're going to charge us extra to see that fight or not. Who's what's y'all early picks for Haney versus Loma. You think Crawford takes heat if he fights Rocha? Yes, he's definitely going to take some heat. I don't think anybody who's been paying attention to the boxing world and understands how things work as far as mandatories and everything and what's happened in the Spence Crawford saga, anybody that knows what's been going on is just going to take it as well. He's satisfying the mandatory. And like I said, I think if he ends up having a fight a mandatory, they're going to move on. They're not even going to fight each other. In fact, he might just use his WBO super champion status and try to get just jump the line and get Jermell Charlo in the ring, because then PBC and Showtime actually have nothing to do with the negotiations because Crawford is a free agent and it will be a mandatory fight for Charlo. So, they could just wait for the deadline to pass, send it to purse bid, let whoever win it, and then that fight end up on BLK Prime, Marv Nation, Triller, whoever, DAZN, whatever. But at that point, I don't feel like he can take heat for it because it's a mandatory fight. Or if he just moves up to fight Charlo, I don't think anybody will complain about that because it is the next best thing. But he gonna take heat. He take heat for everything else. So people gonna have something to say about it regardless. I would hope that if for some reason it's like, because Spence is gonna fight in May no matter what, so it will be good practice for Bud to get in the ring around the same time, like May no later than early June. So then they're both on the same timetable to take vacation, take a month off, and then head back to camp, and then maybe they can fight in August. But they need to already have decided before May gets here that they're going to fight. Like if Keith Thurman and Errol Spence are getting in the ring in May, then Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence need to have an agreement by the end of April. So by the time Errol goes to camp, or by the time he's halfway through camp, that deal is already signed. He don't have to change his focus from Keith. He could get to business with that guy, make sure he defends his position and those belts, and then be ready to fight Terrence Crawford late summer. And I don't want to see them fight any later than September if they're going to do it. So if that's on deck, that he's going to fight Rocha, and then immediately after, 3 to 4 months after, he's going to fight Spence, I think that's the only scenario where he doesn't take heat, because then they can both say they've got a quote unquote tune up before they get into the most important fight of their lives. And the biggest thing is, I do feel like Spence Thurman is more dangerous. I think that tweet was about Better Biv. It wasn't about Terrence Crawford, but I did see it. He was talking about Better Beef because that's coming up tomorrow. And he is an older fighter. He just turned 38 or 39. He's facing a younger fighter, and he has started to have some injury history. So it's a legitimate concern that Father Time is catching up with him. I just don't know if it's going to catch up with him tomorrow, but I am going to throw a lucky dart out there and see if I can win some money. Which mindset? Tell me the tweet. I'm about to go to his timeline, matter of fact. But let's see. I'm gonna go to Errol Smith's timeline. We're gonna sort this thing out. All right. Man, you know who tweets a lot? Clarissa Shields. I do see this Errol tweet where he retweeted Rolly, his trainer, saying, "We'll knock Frank Martin's ass out. Bullet need to go sit down." He gonna get Rolly hurt. He already got him KO'd by Tank. Gave him all that false bravado. Let's see. Father Time is undefeated. I don't care. Only matter of time. He looks his age in the ring. Yeah. So yeah, this is a continuation of a previous basically conversation, because he said I'm rocking with Yard. So that's kind of the only thing I really see. Let me get back to these comments. Yeah, hopefully he about to go start getting ready for Keith Thurman and his knees work. I don't really care what he got to say about too many other fighters, to be honest. I'm ready for him to get in there because we coming up on a year. Like, I prefer that they have been getting this fight on in March. I mean, March or April. But since we can't, I just need him to be focused on camp. Like, don't go overtrain. Time to stop eating whatever you like to eat, drink whatever you like to drink, and get that body right and get focused and be at 100%. Because Keith, like I was about to say, Keith is a more dangerous fight than Rocha, but I wouldn't sleep on either one of those opponents. So he really can't be thinking about nothing else. That's why I would like him to get a deal done with Bud if they're going to get one done sooner than later. That would be my preference if I had to pick. Man, Brenda, you funny. I think Trump writes tweets for Crawford. I don't know, man. I can't tell when these dudes is tweeting for themselves and when they got like somebody on their team doing it, because all of it sound crazy to me. Like, a lot of them have weird phrasings and some of their tweets seem ill-timed, or there's always misspelling and crazy stuff. I don't know. Bud just be popping out the blue with stuff. Like, I thought we was about to get a good little exchange when he was talking about the Cowboys to Errol, and I thought maybe they was gonna give a little banter and maybe kind of like build some momentum around getting them back into the negotiation room, but it didn't seem that way. Now I'm gonna close on this one though. So we got about 3 minutes left. So let's talk about this. So let's talk about that fight to finish. And I've been doing my best to mostly avoid the conversation of why the previous negotiation fell apart, because at this point that horse is dead and severely beaten. So there's nothing else we can say. What happened happened. But I can say that Espinosa's comments on the negotiations and what he thinks can happen going forward. So a lot of people were criticizing him about not really saying anything. Like, Terrence Crawford said he was never offered a guarantee. However, there are multiple reports that he was offered a guarantee that he declined. That doesn't matter to me. Espinosa isn't saying that. All he said is, we hung up on the issue of transparency, basically oversight and veto power. Errol Spence also confirmed there were concerns and issues over oversight, transparency, and veto power. Terrence Crawford expressed the same thing in his IG Live video. What that tells me is you have one detail to iron out, and I think the process of managing the money has to be what they all sit down and negotiate about. Now, what it really looks like is Terrence Crawford wants Errol Spence on the call, on the Zoom, in the room, whatever. He wants to hear his voice saying specific things that he's willing to take and give away, and then he'll rebuttal. I really think that's all it is. Bud just want him in the room. He don't want to deal with Al because he feels like at the end of the day, no matter what happens, if him and Errol have a conversation, he can say, no, I talked to that man and that man said. He doesn't give an out for, well, that went through Al, that went through TGB Promotions, that went through whoever else might represent or speak on Errol's behalf. He wants that ability to be able to say, no, I looked that man in the eye and he said this. I think that's very important to him. Bud gives me old school vibes in a way that I think he understands. He only knows what he knows. And because of that, he seeks comfort in just the old school traditional way of doing things. And I mean, I can respect that. I'm a more modern businessman. If you put your signature on it, I don't care what you tell me to my face. Once you sign it, that's what I'm going to court with. I don't care what you say, because you could look me in my eye and be a damn liar. But if you put it in black and white, it doesn't matter if you told the truth, because what's in black and white is what's going to uphold in court. Because of his approach to that type of situation, I think that's part of also what broke down. He just wanted to look Errol in the face and feel like they were going into partnership on this fight. So I think that going forward, that's going to happen. That's going to have to happen at some point. What? You agree with me, Brenda, for real? Oh, man, that's that's a new one. That's a new one. I got to go check the weather real quick, see if it's some pigs flying outside or something. You agree with something I had to say, but that is my personal opinion of what I think broke down and went wrong. It's just two different mindsets in terms of how they approach business. Errol has been very successful. He's made a lot of money. He's comfortable letting Al Heyman negotiate and work on his behalf. League of Legacy says, I think Terrence wants to control everything and have it all done his way. If I'm Errol, I decline it because it doesn't do anything but stroke his ego. So I think that's a valid point. Um, I've given the solution on multiple platforms, and I've even whittled it down to they may have to look at and share books on some of the mega fights um, that have happened in the past. Let me address this comment. The legal legacy says that's something he needs to understand if he wants to enter the business world successfully. Agreed. Whatever you have in black and white is the only thing that matters when you're doing business, because somebody will shake your hand and look you in the face, but when they get ready to sign paperwork, they could say and do something totally different. So, and their request could change. So I agree with you. Um, I think that the best thing that they could do is set a budget, and they could say, hey, based on previous joint ventures and mega fights, this is what we spent to make those things happen, and this is the return on that investment, right? So once they set that number, let's say they spent 8 million to promote the last big fight. Let's say the biggest fight in Spence's career, numbers wise, was Spence versus winner takes all. But why would I do that? I've built my entire career to get to this point and get an opportunity to make all this money. I'm not about to put it at risk. I might come in injured. It could be anything happen. I would never do a winner takes all when I got to get in there and throw hands and I got to train to get there. Like, that's too much to chance on one night. And if it goes the distance, you leaving it up to the judges. You leaving all your opportunity to make money to some judges that may just have a wild hair that particular day and just favor one style over another. That being said, I think taking like let's say use a Mikey Garcia as a barometer and say, hey, we spent $6 million to advertise that fight and do all the marketing, and this is what our expenditures were. It was 6 million. Let's do inflation because of this new economy. Let's bump that number up to 9. We're gonna say, go up 50% to 9 million. And that's what our budget is. When we get to 6.5 million or 7 million, then we have to come to you for oversight over the rest of the budget. If we spend over, we get to a certain number. Once we get to a certain percent of budget, then we got to come to you and you start to kind of like sign off on the line items to make sure that we come in at budget. You're going to make more than $9 million off this fight. Even just the gate alone is going to make you what? Tank made 5 million off a 20,000 seat gate. So if you put it in a big stadium like Allegiant and Las Vegas, you're going to have an opportunity to make just the expenditures up front off the gate alone. That's not concessions. That's not parking. That's not all that other stuff that has to be divvied up as well. Of course, the network, from what I understand, Showtime was just going to take what they put up, which is the 10 million up front plus another 10%. And then everybody else is going to get the 90%. So of that 90%, Spence will get the 65, and then Terrence will get the 35. So that 65-35 split of whatever the rest of the revenue was. Obviously, Spence is going to have to pay his people. Terrence is going to have to pay his people. But I think that that's an amicable way to do it because it empowers Terrence Crawford, but it also gives him some peace of mind that in black and white ink, in black and white, I have that. We've set a specific budget. I'm not going to oversee every single expense, but once you get to a certain threshold of 75% of our agreed upon budget, I get to come in and make sure I bring this across the finish line at budget by cutting corners where necessary. And I think that that's a simple way that they could fix a complex problem. I don't know why that wasn't offered. Maybe it's just uncommon, or maybe just boxing people don't move that way. But I think that that's something that all parties could agree to that will protect everybody's investment of time and energy. It will be huge with stars and A-list everybody. What we doing? I'm exhausted. Well, I mean, I think I just solved their problem, but unless you could send this to Steven Espinosa and ask him if T Word could get a little an advisor's fee or something like that. I don't know if they're gonna use my plan. So, I mean, it would be interesting if they did come up with a model similar to what I'm pitching out there. And I just want you to know, you more than likely you heard it here first. I think a set budget with a spending threshold, which then actuates an oversight. I think that would be a good way to get this thing rolling. And I think it's something that everybody could agree to because by my estimate, the fight to do 600K on pay-per-view, 500 to 600K on pay-per-view, these dudes are going to make career paydays, even if they didn't get a guarantee. But if let's say, just because Showtime will be putting up the money who already works with Spence, let's say they give him 20, They give Terrence 10, take the 10. They give 20, take the 10. That solves it if Terrence believes it. You have to remember that he's stubborn and wants things his way. I agree with you. But if that offer is floated out and he doesn't agree to it, then at that point, you have to point fingers at him and say, bro, what are we doing? That's going to make it obvious who actually is interested in fighting and who isn't, because I think that that's a very fair offer. And like I said, I just know if he's trying to get the same guarantee as Errol Spence, I don't think it'll happen in this deal. It would definitely have to be off on a whole different network. And, because I think that's why he brought in the hedge fund deal. But again, I know that that's not going to happen. Whatever he's offered as a guarantee, they probably offering Spence about double that. All right, let's see. Did you see? No, you're almost done. But did you see Michael Buffer vid on boxers getting robbed? What do you mean, like by the judges, or do you mean financially by promoters and managers? While you answer, I'm gonna fill in that I did see Deontay Wilder. Um, I mean, we talking, so I'm not just gonna run off on y'all if we're in the middle of a convo. I did see Deontay Wilder talking about people getting paid slowly, but if he was referring to pay-per-view numbers, unless you're willing to take an estimated pay-per-view rate and not an actual pay-per-view rate, you're going to get your money slow because that reporting comes from several different outlets, including overseas and in the US. Legal Legacy says, when you look at what people say about Al, it's hard to think Al didn't break the numbers down to him. I'm sure he did, but if it was a net deal and he wanted oversight, he wanted veto power, that would have been granted. Now, from what I understand, he actually agreed to all this stuff, but he didn't agree to the date. So if that's the case, then we really could have just got it back going. So I feel like there was more meat left on the bone with that situation than we're aware of. So just based on the information that's out there, I think that he didn't really agree to everything. He was open to agree, but he never, excuse me, he never did. My bad, y'all. Okay, Brenda says financially. I hadn't seen that yet. Hard to comment on it. Is it on Twitter, YouTube? Where's it at? I'll definitely take a look when we're done, and I may follow up with the video about it and give my opinion. But as far as Deontay Wilder, here's one thing I do know. It's hard for people to truly give an opinion of something that they don't fully understand. And I think that there's situations that they don't understand. Now, Michael Buffer, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure he does, because he probably deals more so with promoters, managers, networks, people of that nature than he does with fighters directly. So I think that he's probably going to be more insightful. So I'm certainly interested in his opinion because it may give me some perspective on some things that I may not fully understand. So I'm definitely open to whatever he has to offer. But I think to some degree in every business, the talent is making the least money for the most work, because they actually got to get out there and perform. And when it comes to sports, they're putting their bodies at risk. So when they leave the game, if you take a promoter, a manager, a network exec, and a fighter, excuse me, and they all leave the game at the same time after 10 years, the fighter's always a worse for wear. And it's a good chance he might have made the least money, because a manager, promoter, and network can work with several different people at the same time, but a fighter can only fight one fight at a time. So in that regard, if that's robbing, then I could probably agree to that, but I definitely will hold judgment on exactly what it's saying until I see it. But I'm gonna go ahead and wrap it up on that one, y'all. I am getting hungry. I haven't eaten yet. I've been working out all morning, so I'm gonna go ahead and give me something to eat. I do appreciate you guys tapping in. Oh, Brenda came back with something. Got one more thing. I'm gonna comment on this and I'm gonna go. Fighters getting charged $100 a soda for camps was one example. Yeah, but that's stuff that was happening back in the day. Like, that's the kind of stuff Mike Tyson was getting charged for. These contracts are far more advanced, and these fighters have bigger teams. It used to be whoever you use as a promoter, they gave you your lawyer, and they gave you your trainer. Like, they put all your people in front of you. Now these fighters actually have the power to pick their own people and bring them to the table. And that's also why business has really slowed down to a crawl because everybody got their own teams versus like a network or promoter having the team that they assign to you. So I think that that's different. Hey, League of Legacies. Hey, appreciate everything you do. Hey, good people out there. Be sure to check out Black Fathers, Black Father Figures. League of Legacies is the head honcho, the head man, the founder and owner of that organization. I have linked up with him, and once I get all my stuff lined up, I'm definitely going to be putting out more content related to what he's doing and the great thing he's doing. You know, to all the Black fathers, father figures out there. We have a voice, we have an opportunity to be great and leave a legacy, and I'm going to do my part to continue to do that. And he's definitely helping us achieve that goal. So until the next time, thank y'all for jumping in the booth. Hope y'all enjoyed these bars on the mic check. This has been T Word, the People's Champ. I'm out. Peace.